Good morning. Welcome to On Texas Football. I'm Bobby Burton, joined by Gerry Hamilton. This episode of On Texas Football brought to you by Lowy Law Firm. We'll talk to you about them in a minute. Gerry, Longhorns get blown out last night by the Georgia Bulldogs, 35-10. Is blown out a fair description in your opinion, or was there a little bit more to it than that?
No, blown out is a fair description because as close as Vegas is on the lines, when somebody quadruples it, that's a blowout. And the way the game transpired, yes, absolutely. And it was just, look, you have time to process this and process the game. And my thoughts are similar this morning as they were last night, late in the game. Is like, that's 3 times Texas and Georgia have played, and it's 3 times that you walk away from that game knowing who the more physical football team was. And that doesn't mean Texas doesn't have some physical players, but you don't question who won the war.
Yes, I agree with that. I think that's a fair assessment. The one thing I would say is while it did end up a blowout, it didn't start off that way.
No.
Well, it started off that way, but by the third quarter, Texas had trimmed the lead to just 4 points, and then Georgia converts 2 fourth downs, scores a touchdown, and then recovers an onside kick. Texas and Arch Manning left the field, or the Texas offense left the field just down by 4 points. He didn't get the ball back until he was down 18 in the fourth quarter. And so I think that while the scoreboard indicates that it was a blowout, I think there is some nuance and context to be understood. At the same time, Georgia was a clearly superior team on Saturday night. All right, Gerry, let's talk a little bit more in detail about the Texas offense. Going for 274 yards on the night. They were just 2 of 12 on third downs, on key downs, 1 of 1 on fourth down. But the big issue for me is they were one-dimensional almost the entire game, other than the first quarter when they moved the ball successfully on that first drive. After that, it was Arch's arm and those receivers or nothing else.
Yeah, and look, this is a tough one because they ran the ball effectively on the first drive of the game. I think Trey Wisner had about 30 yards on the first drive of the football game. And then the run game went away. And I'm not sure it went away because Texas wasn't having success. That's the tough thing there is you made yourself one dimension. Now, some people say, well, it was the penalties. Yeah, but not the first down penalties. Those those aren't penalties if you had one that kept you from running the football. Texas, that first drive of the game kind of felt like the season to me in a weird way. It was like, oh, man, this looks good. Arch looks good. We're running it good. What? We're moving the Georgia defensive front. Their linebackers were having a big effect. You're running the football outside, inside, both. Key drop. Ends the drive. That kind of felt like the whole season to me. And how different is that game in a weird way if you score a touchdown on that possession? If you execute the entire drive and you get 7 points to start the game in Athens. I'm not saying Texas wins the game because they have just been too undisciplined of a football team this year to say, oh, Texas would have won the game. But I do think that game goes a little different, Bobby. And if you get that touchdown on that first drive, you actually had Georgia on their heels a little bit to start the game defensively because of that drive. Does that change the outcome of the game? I don't know, but I think it might have changed how the game played out quite a bit. Then you get into a situation, whether it's because you don't want to, you abandon the run, which we've seen at times at Texas under Sark, or that you get behind. Well, you became a one-dimensional team. And it really wasn't until Georgia knew that you were one-dimensional that their pass rush really started getting home. That was late in the first half and then at points in the second half. It didn't start, though. That's kind of what, from the fan base perspective, I think that's really tough for the fan base at Texas is they see you run the football successfully on the first drive. Don't really see much of it anymore.
Yes.
And then the pass rush starts getting home. And so from a fan base perspective, I think that's the tough thing to swallow. You can handle a loss. You have a hard time handling an undisciplined loss that ends up in a 25-point loss.
Yep. One carry by a running back in the second quarter. for the Longhorns. I don't know if I would call that abandoning the run, but I would certainly say you put it in the deep freeze
Yes.
for a bit. And that could have been a piece of it. Jerry, the Texas offense moved the ball reasonably well at times, including in the second half in particular. But other than that first drive of the first half, Texas did not move the ball at all, almost the entire first half. And it felt like you got behind and then you were playing catch up the entire game. And that in and of itself, from a strategy standpoint against Georgia, allows them to just nitpick you to death with their offense. And I thought Gunnar Stockton did a whale of a job in leading that Georgia offense last night.
He was extremely accurate. Actually, both quarterbacks were accurate in the first half of this football game. I thought Arch played at a high level in the pocket. It's just decision making. But Gunnar Stockton was extremely, extremely accurate in the first half of that football game. I mean, look, he maybe threw one ball that really wasn't catchable. That's how on target he was. And look, Texas had some pass rush on him. It's not like he was just clean pockets out there, just having 3 and 4 seconds to make throws. Texas was getting some pressure on him, and he was just extremely accurate, very calm, very confident player. And it's kind of what we talked about going into it. That guy's built to play quarterback at Georgia, and that's maybe the most important thing in college football. Are you built to take the ball and lead a program that has national championship expectations? He clearly is, and he is delivering for them more and more as the season moves along. And he did it in the first half without Georgia being able to run the football. So that's probably, if Kirby Smart had a comment about Gunnar Stockton, he's probably like, man, he bailed us out in the first half because we weren't running the football like we normally do. Texas was doing a good job stopping the run. We had to have Gunnar Stockton play at a high level, and he certainly did in the first half.
One of the other things I circled to talk about in this rapid reactions video, discipline and penalties. Texas really hampered by that, particularly in that first half. 7 penalties in the first half, 9 overall for the game. But it seemed like it was just one thing after another for the Longhorns. And it's been a characteristic of this team, not just in this game against Georgia, but for the whole season. They've been heavily penalized. Is that discipline? Is that young players? Is that getting out athleted at times? What is the secret sauce, or what is the one thing you would say about that?
I think it's a combination of things. I mean, look, discipline to me isn't just jumping off sides or, holding on too long on the perimeter on a block. It's a bad route. It's dropping a football, right? It's a defensive lineman if it's a defensive player without gap integrity, right? I mean, I think the discipline thing goes to a lot of things. I think a lot of times you just say discipline, people look for, oh, that guy jumped off sides. Oh, that offensive lineman held. I think it's more than that. And a whole special teams penalty, right? Sark said they prepared for the onside kick all week. Didn't look like they're prepared for the onside kick. So you add all these things up, and that kind of goes to discipline. But it can be a lot of things. And the problem is, the troubling thing in a game like this, it's not something we hadn't seen all season, Bobby.
Yeah. No, it's been an accumulation throughout the whole year. I want to ask you next about the busted coverage in the secondary. But first, let's say thank you to our sponsor of Rapid Reactions. That's Adam Lowy and the Lowy Law Firm. If you've been injured in a car wreck, truck wreck, automobile accident of any kind and think you might be due compensation, please reach out to Adam and his firm at loweylawfirm.com. That's loweylawfirm.com. They'll give you a free, no strings attached consultation to see if you might be due compensation. All right, Jerry, the next piece, the whole idea here, we thought it was an aberration against Vanderbilt. The fourth quarter comeback by Diego Pavia and what they mounted, because Michael Taft wasn't in, because Jelani McDonald wasn't in. The reality of it is 3 of the 4 passing touchdowns from Gunnar Stockton on Saturday night came from busted coverages by the Longhorns, 2 to tight ends, and 1 to an outside receiver that they just it looked like they almost forgot about him when motion went across the backfield. We talked to Rod Babers in the postgame show, And he clearly articulated that there's something else there right now, whether it's a lack of communication or a lack of understanding or football IQ. Something's going on in the Texas secondary. And it showed up at the most inopportune times on Saturday night. Do you have a feel for what that is? Is it personnel? Is it just not having some camaraderie back? I mean, what is it that seems to be the issue?
Well, I think one of the things, and we talked about in the offseason, there's kind of one of the questions about this team was not that there were a ton of questions about this team, that a lot of played out that really weren't there in the offseason. But how could you replace Jahdae Barron and Andrew Makuba? Those were two highly intelligent football players. I mean, that was almost like playing against two corners and two safeties instead of one corner and one safety. And then you had a good communicator in Taft and Manny Muhammad. You had great communication. That thing was tied together. Linebackers got picked on a little bit against Clemson, but it wasn't as drastic as we've seen. But when you look at it, I mean, Texas lost two high football IQ players out of their secondary last year. And it's hard to automatically replace those guys. I mean, you can replace the talent, but it doesn't mean you're replacing the IQ of those football players. And I think that's been a bigger, maybe even a bigger loss than what we thought. And then, you move Gilbo from nickel to corner, and Grayson Littleton's had a great year, but Gilbo's not as good a corner as Jahdae Barron. He was a Thorpe Award winner at the same time, right? So I think it's I think the communication and I think the football IQ of the two guys you lost were about as high level as you get in the secondary, and kind of tying things together and be able to execute a scheme about as well as you can. And what that does is that masks other deficiencies you have, right? So that you're not able to mask the deficiencies you have this season like you were last season.
Yeah, and we talked a little bit about this. Georgia was able to run the ball a little bit, particularly in that third and fourth quarter when they put the hammer down. Was the fourth quarter, and they started getting the run game going with Nate Frazier. Texas never got it going in the run game because for various reasons, but one of them may have been a lack of commitment to it, like we talked about it earlier, and the other may be just how physical they were on the offensive and defensive line of scrimmages. And I'm talking about Georgia. You mentioned this at the outset. Georgia was the more physical team on Saturday night. How does Texas counteract that in the future? What is the next step? Is it players? Is it style? Is it scheme? What do we need to do next?
I think that's a great question, and I think Sark's going to have a interesting. Well, here's the reality: you don't have an off season. The portal's coming. Signing day's 3 weeks away. The portal, working signing days, a majority that's done, but in the high school level, the portal's right around the corner. Then you get right into spring football. So it's not like there's a lot of time in the off season to reflect on this. But I will say this: if you look at the history of the league you're in now, you have to have a physical downhill run game on some level. I mean, Nick Saban had it. Urban Meyer had it. Kirby Smart has it. I mean, you just keep looking. LSU's had it. That may have not been their 2019 team, but they've had it under Les Miles. They had it under Nick Saban. So there's a history in this league of that. Bobby, the Tennessee teams, I know you're close to Phil Fulmer. They could physically run the football at you. That's a history in this league. And I think that's where, Sark's going to have to dig deep on this is, what do you want to do versus what you have to do? And I think that's always the crossroads for coaches is, it's adapt or die, right? I mean, Nick Saban adapted offensively to the rule changes in college football, to some of the recruiting things. And at Sark's now at a point where I think he's really going to have to take a hard look at it and adapt. You have to have a build, and I don't think it's just as simple as, hey, go get these two portal guards, everything's fixed. I just don't think it works that way. I think there has to be a real commitment, and that's going to probably be some change within your scheme to have a physical downhill run game and build everything off of that. I think that's going to be the tough decisions that coaches have to make. And I think Sark is, after the season, is going to be at that point where he's going to have to look at it. And I'm not saying Sark hasn't done really good things at Texas. He has. But I also think you always have to be adaptive, right? And you have to say, okay, this didn't go how we planned. Now what do we do? And, the 3 losses to Georgia have all been very similar. So now what do you do moving forward? Because here's the other thing. Texas A&M is kind of on that path and that trajectory. They can run the ball downhill. They're very physical in their run game. And you're seeing it in year 2, and you saw a little bit in year 1, but you're seeing in year 2 what that is doing for them. So it's going to be a very interesting off season, and air quotes for the podcast people. But I think Sark's going to have to really dig deep on this to kind of begin to make some changes. They're going to lead him down the path of how others are having success in the SEC and have had success in the SEC.
As it relates to physicality, I've got a quote from last night from Kirby Smart that I want to read. It's what we build our core culture around, being the more physical team, and you have to recruit physical players. I don't know that a lot of these kids want to check. They don't want physicality. If you have the check and no physicality, you end with nothing. You're not just getting the checks at our place. We're hitting people. That seems a little bit of bravado there from the Georgia head coach, but there's an element, or at least a kernel of truth to it in some regards, in that, hey, Texas was out physical by Georgia. I don't know it has to do with who gets paid and what gets paid, because let's be clear, Georgia is paying recruits and players just as well. That's kind of an interesting statement, but the reality of it is Georgia, it was the more physical football team on Saturday night. Texas needs to get better in that regard. I do think that maybe if they had a bigger running back that was healthy, that might help that interior run game a little bit, and you could lean on it. But CJ Baxter's not been there this year. His health is an issue. And Trey Wisner is limited, even though he's a very, very talented young player. All right, Jerry, last thoughts. The season is not over for the Longhorns. They have Arkansas coming up this Saturday. Then they finish with A&M now. I guess that's 12 days away, day after Thanksgiving. What are you looking for Texas as they host Arkansas? Because this is an Arkansas team and an Arkansas offense that can throw the ball around the yard. Taylor Green is a talented quarterback. Bobby Petrino, their head coach now, or interim head coach, knows what it takes to move the football. What are you looking for this coming week? I think it's going to be hard, Texas, to get ready mentally, not so much physically, but mentally against Arkansas.
I think this is Sark's. I was trying to think back since he actually built the program, rebuilt the program, and had it in position to win. This may be his toughest coaching week of that time.
He's going to have to get them, not because of not necessarily because of the team that they're playing, but because of the
circumstance and situation. Look, I mean, right now, Texas players have gone from being ranked number 1 to thinking they're not going to be in the playoff. And that's always I think that is a tough thing right now. And I'm not saying that a Hail Mary can't happen and 6 teams lose and you can get in at 9th. I'm not saying that, but right now, doesn't look good. And Arkansas, these kids don't understand the rivalry of Arkansas. They don't understand that. Justice Terry's of the world, Murad Watson's, the guys that are playing, Cole Brevards, they don't understand. They didn't grow up in these rivalries, right? Times are different now. Not that Arkansas and Texas have had the rivalry, but you get what I'm saying. But this is going to be tough for Sark to have these guys emotionally up for this game. This is a massive challenge for him. If he can get them through this game and win this football game, then I think it gets to A&M. And you will, even though you may have not lived that rivalry, they got a taste of it last year. They know what this rivalry is about now. So I don't think that's going to be difficult at all, because A&M is going to roll in 11-0. And you still have a chance to make a statement and see where the chips fall. And I'm not saying Texas deserves to be in the playoffs, but somebody's going to get in this year that may not deserve to be in. That's just reality where it's at, depending on who gets upset. But I think this is the toughest task Sark's had. Bobby, maybe you can remember one that's tougher
No,
than this.
I thought he did a great job. Remember when they were already out of the playoff? They were already out of bowl contention against Kansas State several years back.
Yeah.
They were like 4-7 heading into the final game. Had lost to Kansas, and Sark and Roshan Johnson really came up with a win over a Kansas State team that theoretically had every reason to beat them. There was nothing left to play for other than your own heart and identity and pride. And Texas came out and finished the season 5-7 in Sark's first year, but it's somewhat like that. There's nothing really on the line other than your pride. What are you going to do? And I think
this may be the most deflating loss in a while for this program.
I think so. I mean, I think because of the number, the 35-10, but at the same time, I think Georgia's a top 5 team in the country.
Yeah.
Texas is not a top 5 team in the country, not this year. And we learned that on Saturday night. All right, that's going to do it for this episode of On Texas Football. Rapid Reaction. Thanks again to our sponsor, Adam Lowy, over at the Lowy Law Firm. If you've been injured in a car wreck, truck wreck, or automobile accident of any kind, make sure you give Adam and his group a shout over at loweylawfirm.com. Thank you, Adam, for your sponsorship. And thank you to all of you for listening to our Rapid Reaction show. We've got more. We got the offensive and defensive grades. Some of those aren't going to be too pretty coming up later. Jerry, you and Rod get together tonight to talk a little Longhorn live stream. They'll be answering your questions. Also, I'll do the second watch with Rod Babers. He's going to watch the game again this morning, and he and I will talk about it this afternoon for you guys. All right, for Gerry Hamilton, as well as our producer, Matt Hutchinson, I'm Bobby Burton. You guys have a good day. Longhorns lose a tough one, 35-10, Georgia Bulldogs. Hook 'em.